Good evening, everyone. Hope am I audible to all of you? Are you able to hear me? Just reply in the chat. We'll just begin the session shortly. Are you able to see me and hear me? Are you able to hear me? Fine. It says it's gone live. Just confirm once. Others is telling no. Okay. Sachin and Yuvakishore are telling yes. Okay. I think some of you might be having some difficulty. I think most of you are able to hear me. Okay, cool. Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Kamal. Yeah, good to know that you're able to hear me. Okay, all right. Yeah, so we will get started. Good evening, everyone. Warm welcome to today's session. And as you kickstarted the WSA, the full stack or the MERN Stack Internship, one of the other initiative that we do in between is to give you certain sessions in the form of interactive webinar like this. These things are more about career awareness, job opportunities, and what is happening in the current job market, etc. So in this regard, we are having a session today where we are going to talk about the road ahead. For example, whatever you are doing now as a part of the internship, you have taken a very good step by enrolling for the program. You are still in the early phases of the internship program. Still you have quite a long way to go. So we are going to discuss what is the road ahead, like how can you build a roadmap for yourself, right? And the recommendation is that start early. Okay, so that you whatever the job market today is expecting, the earlier you start and you are able to build that kind of a skill set, you will be able to make much better progress as time progresses, right? So that's going to be the agenda for today. Where are we with respect to internship, and where the job market is heading, and how can progress further, right? So that's going to be the idea. So before I begin today's session, can you all type me which semester you are in? I guess typically the pre-final year students come in, or sometimes final year students come in. May I know which semester you are currently in? 6, 7, 8, or even 3? Yeah, 6 I could see. 6, 5, 4, 1, fourth year, 7th, 5th, third semester. Really appreciate. Okay. Just completed BTech. We can also see students who completed is there, 4 sem completed. Okay, it's a mixture of audience, 3, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Yeah, second done. Okay, cool. Okay. So MCA, okay, there is also doing that. All right, yeah. Okay, that's cool. Okay. So with that note, let us get started. Just to share my screen. Yeah, so let me. So this is what we are going to discuss today. Basically, start early, stay ahead is the buzzword, and we are going to talk in a broader theme of the road ahead. Okay. So people who don't know me, my name is Jay Kumar. I am part of the leadership team at Emerzi. Emerzi is our parent company, and where we deliver the IoT and the embedded systems courses. WebStack Academy is our another brand, you can say, where we deliver the WebStack courses, primarily based on MERN Stack. And we've been in this education and training industry for more than 20 years. As an organization, we primarily focus to two things. One is to skill the entry level engineers like you people, provide you guys with a hands-on technical skill so that you become ready for the job market. And second segment we target is the working professional, where the people who are already having some work experience, who wanted to transition to the latest stack. For example, when you talk about the web stack, we have different type of stacks available, right? For example, in the front end, it remains the same: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because what the user sees in the browser, there is not much change, because you cannot have multiple variants here, because all the browsers need to interpret the front end in the similar fashion. Whereas if you go to the back end, you have a different set of stacks. Way back, it all started with PHP, then it became Java, then Ruby, Python, right? And we talk about the JavaScript in the backend, which is nothing but the Node and Express, which you all called as a MERN stack. So there is a lot of backend stacks or backend technologies available. So professionals who are in the legacy stack, so let us say somebody is working in PHP stack for a while, and they wanted to transition into the modern day stack, or the MERN stack, right? Because there are many reasons which we'll cover in the today's session also. You will see that the JavaScript based stack, where JavaScript is used both in the front end as well as in the back end, is gaining the popularity because you have a simple or the same stack available everywhere. You can learn one programming language. Just a minute. Let me adjust the AC a little bit. So for example, if you are using a different you need to learn the front end JavaScript also, and the back end maybe you need to learn about Python with a Flask framework, or let us say you need to learn Java with a Spring Boot or something like that. So if you learn a MERN stack based framework, you will learn one programming language, that is JavaScript, to be used in both front end and back end. And later we'll see JavaScript helps us to build scalable applications. We'll see all those things, right? So that's what we do. We give hands-on training programs in these areas, and help them to get into jobs in the full stack web developer, either as a front end only or back end only, or a full stack, who is handling both front end and back end. Okay, so that's what we do. And coming to me, I have about 25 years of work experience. In the initial 12 and a half years, I worked with companies like Ishoni Networks, HP, and Huawei. Largely, I spend my time in the system side technologies are a core area. But having said that, during my mid of my career, when I was in HP, that is when we started this idea of cloud computing, where we are connected the printer to the cloud, and you started communicating. That was my first exposure towards web technologies, because I come from the firmware and I know our core background. So that's when I got an exposure to what does it take to build a scalable web applications by leveraging the existing web stacks and protocols. And then subsequently, wherever we go today, there is nothing called an independent device, right? When you talk even about an IoT, everywhere it's a connected experience. So that way, largely my background is from the embedded or in the firmware side, but yeah, I do have some good experience in the web or the full stack or the scalable cloud application side also. Okay, so that's about my background, and my team of mentors deliver these training programs. I guess you're already interacting with our mentor, Richa, who is delivering these sessions with you guys. And I guess she has already delivered a few sessions. And today they said, in between, right, just to give you a feeling of where, how you can build further, this particular webinar or this particular, session is organized, right? That's a plan for today. I'll be stopping in some regular intervals. You guys can ask me questions, so that we can make it interactive, because I don't want to make it as a one way presentation kind of a thing, right? It becomes kind of boring, right? So let us use a two-way communication. Let us try to answer as many questions as possible, because in the YouTube live, I see questions run very fast. Let us try to see what best I can do for you guys, right? But as my request to you, all of you, is just ask as many questions that you have in your mind. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Talk about the internship program. Where are you now at this juncture? And details of full stack web developer job and its importance, right? And we will also look into the trends and opportunities, where the job market is heading, what are the factors that are influencing, right? And what we generally say, whenever you are a college grad, some of you have completed the completed the engineering, and many of you in the college itself. So we say take a three phased approach. There is a typo here. Yeah, I'll just make it as a phased, right? So how can you take a three phased approach to build a long and sustaining career? That's also connects the topic of start early, and then the next steps what you can do, and some Q&A. As I said, I don't want to reserve the Q&A towards the end. Let us keep the interaction going as and when in some logical intervals. Okay, so with that note, let me just start. Okay, so internship at WSA, where we stand and what did we achieve, right? I don't know much to achieve, because we're still in the early phase of the internship, but let us say another 2 3 weeks down the line, when you guys complete this internship, how would you look like, what and all your gain? Okay, let us get try to get into an idea. So definitely, you would have got an idea about how to implement a project, right? I could see that you're already been given a project of the food delivery app. In fact, it is a little interesting for me to explain this to many of the potential young engineers and say that, okay, what does your internship do you do a project? And say, yes, but how do I basically know that I have the necessary skills, right? That's where it becomes a chicken or egg problem. So if you look at the tier one engineering students, right, when people study in IITs or NITs or similar colleges, they get this skill set as a part of their curriculum itself, or they also have the ecosystem where they do a self learn. And then when the companies hire, they basically pay a stipend and then they take in, because these students can bring in value from day one because they already bring the skill set into the table. But as you know, that is a very small percentage of the students. But the largest set of the students, like people whom we are talking today, majority of you, what we see is that you are all looking for mainly an opportunity where you want to build a project, but you may or may not have the necessary skill sets. So that's the reason why, if you see this particular internship, it is a combination of both. We start with a project because only when we teach a skill set, it becomes like a training program, right? So this is a combination of a project based skill building programs interleaved with each other, where you understand a project, because I strongly believe whenever we give it as a big picture, we'll be able to get a better idea about why I am doing certain things, right? So whenever there is a whenever we do certain tasks, if you know the big picture, why I am doing this and what would be my eventual output, generally that increases the motivation, right? Rather than telling, what, learn this HTML, make this border, right, or make this particular color schema in CSS, or put a button and make it as a interactive web page using a vanilla JavaScript or using React. You may say, okay, fine, where does it all add up to, right? Whereas I say in the beginning itself, what, guys, you are going to build a food delivery app, so that gives you motivation, right? So that is how we started, where we are going to primarily talk about the basics of computer science, get you an idea about the front end and React. As you know, as the web applications are becoming more rich, right? So end of the day, it's a HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But as the front end becoming much more interactive and a lot of functionality getting integrated with it, that is what we call it as a the single page applications, or the interactive web applications today. So where the front end need to scale up, so that is where multiple frameworks or libraries have come in. React is a library. Similarly, you have Angular, Vue, Vue.js, etc., etc. Multiple things have come up so that you can build a wonderful functionality as a part of the what you call a front end itself, right? So again, moving on to the phase 4, where what are we going to do in this internship in the back end? Because if we include both front end and back end and make it as a real end to end development, it becomes quite overwhelming for students. So what we do is we do the front end, and we help you to learn how to use programming using React in the front end. Then we'll give a ready made back end. So that is nothing but built using the Node and Express.js, and then basically help you how to integrate so that you get a feel of how to basically build a end-to-end application whenever you are doing this food delivery app, right? How does it application works, right? So you'll get a real feel of it, right? But as a phase 2, right, whatever you are doing in this particular internship, because this is a typical question that I get to listen in many of the such programs or webinars, saying that, sir, you said it's full stack, but what, we are focusing on front end and React, are we not covering back end, right? We can very well do that, but it will become too much. Then so what we're doing is we are giving you the API from the backend built based on a Node and Express, so that you can integrate and then test it and build a basically portfolio for yourself, right, and get a certification. But as a next phase, that is what we are also going to talk about in the road ahead. You can develop your own backend, right? We can also support you with some resources, and you can do that, so that end to end you are able to build a MERN Stack web application, right? So because sometimes what happens, first step should be first step, right? You cannot take 5 step and then sometimes you feel overwhelming, right? Challenges should be something which should be achievable. If you make it too difficult, we lose motivation. If it's too easy, also we lose motivation. So by having it as a right balance, where you get to know about the backend integration, you'll definitely get a very good exposure towards this particular program. So that's what I was telling in the beginning. By combining the project based approach with the skill building approach, you'll be able to build a end to end application on your own. Okay. And that is where the real propulsion starts. Then subsequently we leave it to you guys to build on it. We'll talk about some tips and what we can do further, so that you can build your subsequent more projects, and definitely aim for a job opportunity, right? And kindly note, this particular internship does not come with a job opportunity. Not it doesn't come with the placements. This is more, our idea is basically give you guys an exposure how to build it, because many a times students lack the hands-on experience, right? How to build a project. That's what we do as a part of this internship. But it is not a placement oriented program. Okay, so that is clear. This is what we stand with respect to this, right? So what did we achieve? I just put it as a futuristic way. What you will be able to do, that you'll get a full understanding of the technology, and definitely the hands-on coding and programming exposure. Okay. And typically what we say, around 4,000 lines of code will be right. In fact, these days I hear that students write much more than that. Okay. And foundations and software engineering practices. This is very critical. For example, understanding the object-oriented programming concepts, right? Understanding what is an object, okay? Understanding what is a virtual function, basically understanding about the data abstraction. Okay, what is the public, what is the private? So these type of things remain common whenever we go for this type of a web. Tomorrow, for example, earlier, right, before we were running the MERN Stack internship, right? We used to run it on a mean stack. Earlier we used to do it on an Angular based internship, or even our course was based on Angular, right? But later it became a MERN. So tomorrow some other framework might come up, and then things may change, right? That's the beauty of web technology. Because as I said, one of the fascinating experiences that I had as a firmware engineer was that, as an embedded or a firmware engineer, right, still C programming is the most powerful and widely used programming languages in embedded systems, right? More than 80% of the embedded systems are still coded using C. Whereas if you see in web development, right, things keep changing. Okay. And more frameworks are coming in, more programming paradigms are emerging, and things like that, right? So it is important that not only you learn how to code, but also build a sound foundation and software engineering practices, so that these things come in handy whenever you are potentially applying for placements, and also later point in time when you want to build your career. Okay. So what WSA we do is, like, we wanted to ensure that we give you guys a real quality experience for 1 month, to really make you hands on. Because whenever we say internship, pretty much it becomes a loosely coupled item, right? Where many times we see students do something, and then they submit and they get some certificate for the namesake and go, right? But here we really want you to learn something, build on your own. That is why we also given the access to the LMS, and our mentors do respond to your queries, etc., to ensure that you're well supported. Because say for example, you're trying something but it's not working, right? Or you need some type of a feedback for your work, right? So that's what we do. And as I said, this is absolutely a free program. There is no cost associated with it at all. And the idea is, if people ask us, say, why are you doing it for free, right? The idea is to bring in the awareness about engineering graduates about some technology, so that you get actually a direction to our career. Over the years we have been thinking, how do we contribute to the industry academia gap? What today the engineering college are teaching, what the modern day industry is expecting, right? There's a huge difference. Other many ways people are trying to address this gap, and we thought this would be one of the best ways that we are able to address the gap as a part of our team, right? This is what we are doing. Okay. So before I get into the the career and opportunities and other things, right? I would like to pause and check any questions that you have so far. So far, whatever I covered, right? In terms of the what do you call, the internship program, and why we are doing that. Are you clear? Shall I proceed to the next section? Whatever I mentioned so far, are you able to relate? Yeah. Okay. I'm getting some yes here. Okay. Shall I proceed? Or you have any questions? Okay. Clear. Yes, sir. Screen is not visible. Yes, yes. I just I just unshared the screen. I'll share it once again. Don't worry. Okay. Yeah. Could you please share the AI overtaking full stack jobs? Okay, that's also a good question. It's from Kirtana. Give me some time, Kirtana. In my subsequent slides, I have some bullet points on that. We will, also we'll discuss about this. I'm sure this will be the question any webinar that I go. What about AI, right? Okay. Uh, so there's a question, sir. Can I be able to understand the MERN stack within 1 month? As I told Vignesh, our idea is to not to go in deep and explain all the MERN components. We'll primarily focus on the front end and then help you how to integrate. Then you need to build time. Okay, that's why we need to spend more time in understanding the MERN stack, understanding the backend database, etc. Okay, so that this is just a start, I would say. Okay, rather than because what happens if you try to crush the entire MERN stack in 1 month, right? You guys will go, you guys will get more confusion, right? So that is how it is structured. Okay, hope that's clear, Vignesh. Okay. Um, Okay. Okay. So I did study Java. That's good. Avinash, that's always nice. Any backend language that it's good. In fact, as I told, right, web application, the backend is an agnostic. It can be Java, it can be, Python, anything. But we recommend you guys go with Node and Express. Some of the reasons why it is like that, I'll have some, data points to share with you guys. Okay. Last date for project submission. Just wait. I guess this question should go to Miss Richa, who is our mentor, who is handling the, technical part of it, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions before you? Yeah. Sir, no Python and the libraries. Okay, yeah, that is also that is also a good item, because Python is a very versatile programming language. Python not only helps in the web application, even today when you look at machine learning or any other general application development, it is useful. Okay, but what I'm saying is, comparatively, when it comes to the scalable web applications, we'll talk about it, where MERN plays much more significant role because of some reasons. I'll cover it in a little bit of technical details in the subsequent slides. Okay. Yeah. Right. That's pretty much okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. If AI building full stack application, and what is the use of learning? I will come to that AI. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll get into that. I think some more questions are coming. Keep coming, guys. Let me come back to that. Yeah. So let me go back to my slide. Yeah. So let us talk about the web application development, right? And career in FSD, right? So this is one of the surveys done quite some time back about the most difficult role to hire. Okay, it is a survey. Hacker Rank, some of you know, it's a popular platform for learning the competitive coding, similar to Lead Code. Okay, so they surveyed companies of different sizes, and then they came up with the clear cut idea that the full stack web developer is the most challenging role to hire. Okay, if you see here, it's right on top. Okay, even though like machine learning or DevOps engineer, etc., are there, right? It is actually a full stack web developer. Okay, so you may be wondering why. A very simple reason being, a full stack developer is like a all rounder in cricket. I'm sure some of you may be cricket fans here, who knows batting, bowling, and fielding, right? Or wicket keeping, whatever you can call, right? So the full stack developer brings in the skill set of the front end, back end, and then say back end, back end programming, a server logic, and then followed by the database. Okay, so somebody who brings in such a versatile skill set into the table is one of the key reasons why the full stack web developer is one of the most challenging roles to hire, right? Has it changed because of AI? We'll come to that in the subsequent slides. I have some slides to cover. Okay, so definitely there are opportunities in the market, because the India, irrespective of all the things that are happening in the world. I know today, as we speak, the war, and then the AI, and then the geopolitics, etc., are creating a lot of challenges. But having said that, there is no denying about the fact that India, being the the country with the youngest most number of youngest population, right, and then who have aspirations to basically develop their skill set and take up job in the technology. Okay, so these are some of the statistics, right? Okay, and moving slightly technical here, I'll come to the AI shortly, right? We discussed about JavaScript. Some of you mentioned about Python and some of you mentioned about Java, etc. So top five reasons for the JavaScript popularity. JavaScript, continues to be one of the most popular programming languages. Sometimes it is in the top, sometimes little below the top, etc. So as I told, one of the reason is whenever you, in the context of web application, okay, because we also talked about Python. As I said, Python has got a wide variety of scope even beyond the web applications, right? Okay, but if you look at the web applications, the front end anyway, JavaScript has to run as a part of the browser, right? Which is a which is a only unified language every browser can interpret and bring in the interactivity, right? And in the backend we have multiple choices, but basically having these JavaScript to be used in the backend, you can learn one programming language and both use in both front end and backend. When you say Node.js or Express.js, they're nothing but JavaScript used in the backend. Okay, that's one first advantage. Second thing is, when you talk about the backend, especially the Node and Express, it is having a very rich library support, using which you will be able to basically build the applications faster and easier. Okay, and it's trending. It's actually one of the topmost programming languages. Not only that, some of the popular apps that we are using, web applications that we are using on a very regular basis, name it Netflix, name it Uber, they're all written using a Node.js and or whatever you can call it as a MERN stack, right? Our front end could be basically it is used in the base backend, it is used in the JavaScript, right? Okay, and then very high deployment. I don't want to basically show you because these insights we derived based on certain market level data. And the JavaScript actually is one of the most highly adapted language in the modern web applications. If you look at in the backend, right? Okay, and also the library support, which I spoke about, Node.js is one of the best. Okay, and as a developer or an engineer who wanted to build a career in the application development, it is easier to learn. It is not as complicated. Or one of the other reason also could be attributed to the first reason which we said, right? One language when you learn for both front end and in the back end, you naturally tend to write more code and tend to write more practice, tend to get more practice. That's also a reason why you're able to basically build learn faster and then master it, right? So this is one of the point that you need to keep in mind about why JavaScript. Okay, and web application today, anything that we get up in the morning and we go to sleep, we touch tons of applications in e-commerce, social media, travel, fintech, edtech, right? Medical, real estate, entertainment, manufacturing, government, HR, legal. Anywhere that you go today, web applications are there. Okay, or you can say also say the mobile interfaces of it. But end of the day, there is a server that is sitting, which is actually handling all the backend. The front end could be a browser or the front end could be an app, but the backend should be the same backend which is catering to both the requests, right? So basically it is used across all the verticals, right? And specifically when you talk about the MERN stack, it is powering almost all the popular applications that we are aware of in the modern day applications, right? Say Netflix, right? Say Airbnb, say Swiggy, right? LinkedIn, Walmart, Twitter, right? Or X you can call, right? Instagram, right? Uber, PayPal, right? Or Medium, or whatever your WhatsApp, right? I think it's a small mailing mistake there. It's so all these applications are using the JavaScript based stack only. Okay. So here somebody asked me about Java and JavaScript, right? If you look at one of the key reasons why JavaScript is used, especially in the backend. In his front end, there is no choice. Everybody end up using that, right? In the backend, one of the reasons that we use is, say, as I mentioned initially, when your web applications were designed, right? Those applications were designed for a particular scale. For example, there are certain enterprises which are using some intranet, for example, right? When I joined my first company, there used to be intranet where we used to do all our internal, let's say I want to apply a leave, or let's say I want to apply for a, apply and then see my pay slip, right? Or I wanted to basically, what do you call, apply for some, a document from my company, right? Or I want to see how my performance is over the years, right? So these type of applications, when companies were developing, right? So these applications were called as enterprise applications. So enterprise in the sense what? It will be used by, let us say, few thousands of people or few lakhs of people, right? The scale is, let us say, even a big company. Let us say TCS has got an intranet, for example, right? it has got few lakhs of people, right? So that is more of an intranet which is very well internal to the you know company, right? But when you move it to a when as the internet or as the cloud computing picked up in the mainstream phenomena, these applications, or let us talk about Netflix or any of these streaming applications, right? How many people are accessing simultaneously, right? When you talk about Swiggy, how many people are basically ordering anything there for a minute basis or even seconds basis, right? Instagram, how many people are watching the reels? How many people are uploading the reels? How many people are browsing their feed or doing many content? So when you talk about these, right, these requests is easily scaled to millions, right? So compared to the enterprise applications which are having few lakhs of users, or a popular cloud-based application in any of these things, we are talking about millions, right? These two are different ball game, right? Let us say 1 lakh versus 10 lakh. These two are different ball game, right? So the one of the key reason why this has become, because the scalability, right? The scale in which these applications are used is tremendous, right? And it has to work seamlessly. Imagine, right, for 1 minute your WhatsApp is down, right? Or a few seconds your Instagram reel is not loading, right? How frustrated we become, right? Or sometimes the Swiggy, when you are pressing the order, it is waiting to confirm. That circle is rotating 5 more times, right? So that much scalability and that much performance is expected. So that is where, compared to other programming languages, let us say Java or PHP, right? Kindly note, Java and PHP are still used in the backend. I'm not telling they're completely gone. Some of you are already developed some applications also. But what I could put across as some perspective is that companies which are building legacy applications, for example, they have certain websites which are already built over years. For example, our WebStack Academy, right, website, we use a framework called WordPress. Some of you would have heard, right? So WordPress is coded using PHP in the backend. So we wanted to use WordPress because of some reasons, because it's easy to maintain the backend. You can add the page easily, etc. That's more of a content management system that is available in the backend, right? So which is already coded using PHP. So our website runs in the PHP in the backend. So that doesn't change. And kindly note, right, the traffic that WebStack Academy gets, I don't know how my team will be able to tell. Maybe few thousands or maybe few 10,000s. We do not know, right? Not more than that. So for such kind of scalability, right, it was working fine. But as your scalability happened, right, some of these programming languages also started consuming a lot of resources in the backend, right? Okay, the resources in terms of your computational power, storage, etc. Right, that is where JavaScript came and changed the game. The JavaScript backend, predominantly the Node.js and the Express.js, where they are able to serve, able to scale and serve so many millions of users, and also consume relatively lesser amount of resources and give an excellent performance. Okay, because we may not be able to foresee this as a scalability or the security or a performance as a key factor, because we tend to see in the front end only. But this is the back end, right? For example, whenever I'm sitting and talking, right, you will not be able to see whether I'm whether I'm consciously taking a oxygen or not, whether I'm breathing or not. But that's a fundamental thing for somebody's living, right? Or somebody's heart is beating, right? Or somebody's stomach is digesting. So this we will not be able to see. But in the front end is what I'm saying. But all I would like to bring in a perspective is that today, modern day applications, and as I speak to more and more startups, right, which are developing the modern day applications, they're also adapting widely this MERN stack based or a JavaScript based backend. Okay, so that's one of the reason why you guys should definitely consider. I'm not telling don't learn PHP, don't learn Java. If you already learned it, well and good. But I suggest that you guys transition into the MERN based stack, so that you can potentially be part of an organization which is building these type of technologies or these type of applications. Okay, hope I'm making sense, guys. Okay, so that's about a little bit of a technical background. Okay, again, as always, let us pause and check how are we doing. Are you able to connect me and share? Okay. Yeah. So, any questions so far? Are you getting the importance of the JavaScript? Are you getting it? Okay. So we provide mainly basically about the burn stack only. Okay. And how could we able to integrate LLMs to our project? Okay, so there is an AI enabled angle. AI enabled development also will be there, I guess, as a part of this project. Okay, we have in our full stack real course that we do, we are already included integrating the LLMs, but I'm not sure whether it is part of the internship project that your guys are going to build. But you can subsequently check, okay, with Richa probably tomorrow. Okay. Does MERN and MERN stack is mostly used in enterprise too, sir? Yes, everywhere it can use, but largely when I say web scale, when you talk about, as I mentioned, right, I'm not talking about few thousands here. When you talk about millions of users, definitely, MERN stack plays a very important role. Okay. So what we had done, we just did a bit of introduction, then we moved on to the web applications and why, and basically, MERN stack is being used. Okay. There's a question I would like to do freelancing. Does MERN stack is only enough or need to learn any other stacks too, sir? Right. So see, again, when you wanted to do a freelancing, definitely MERN stack is a good enough, because you'll be sounding very modern day web application developer, and people will prefer that. Okay. Again, on the other hand, when you want to be a freelance developer, you should have a in-depth, right? You're not only talking about a developer means you can go on basically work as a company and give you a deliverable. But your freelancer means you're directly paid with the customer, right? There are a lot of freelancing platforms where you can go and list your skill set, and then people will give you the work, and you need to execute it diligently. So my request is to Kirtana, right, to build a in-depth experience in MERN stack by working on more projects, etc. Okay. Is it fine? Kitana, any other questions so far? Or I would ask a question before I start. Are you able to understand why MERN stack is more important in today's web application context? Because I would like to pause and check. As I said, I don't want it to look like a monologue or you know a theory session. All right. Okay. All right. I think we'll move on. Let me again share my screen. Now, what we'll do is we'll slowly, start getting into the little bit of a career and road mapping part of it. Major agenda for today, because I want to set the context with this, information whatever we shared so far. No, just no, I shared. Yeah. So let us check about the job market trends and opportunities. Right, where are the jobs? Right, how it is, where and all it is moving. Right, what are the trends we are seeing? Right. So definitely, when you talk about job market situation, right? As somebody already asked about AI, so definitely AI has changed the way how any work is done, right? And earlier there was a understanding that the developer jobs were the ones which are hard to replace, and probably the Claude or Claude Code, one of the thing it did, what it has replaced the developer job only as a first role or something like that, right? So what are we seeing in the job market? Does it mean that there won't be any developer who are required, right? Does it mean that there's no use of learning programming, right? Is it something like all the jobs are going to get replaced with AI, etc., right? Okay. So one thing for sure is that things are evolving fast, right? Nobody can give a conclusion saying that what, this is how the future is going to look like, because the change that the AI has brought in is quite transformational in nature. It is not a small change, right? It's like as good as an innovation of a four-stroke engine, right? It is as good as a innovation of a microprocessor, right? As much as these innovations has shaped the world, definitely AI is also changing the world, right? So here what we are seeing is definitely the manual, repetitive, mundane jobs are getting replaced, right? Where you do not necessarily need a human being. You can very well do it with a script, or you can very well generate the code and do it, right? Has it resulting in the jobs that are, is the jobs are getting reduced? The answer is yes, right? But we would like to see another perspective, where any such innovation has come in the past, right? It has definitely reduced some jobs and it has added some jobs. Probably it has brought in much more higher end jobs. So what we are seeing is, if you see in the traditional entry level job market, wherever you guys are in, or whichever the companies which are going to recruit you in your campus, right? So what they used to do, typically we call it as IT services companies. So what these IT services companies will do, be it TCS, Wipro, right, Infosys, etc. So they basically take a big project and they wanted to recruit, and that work will involve one or more kind of activities, right? You may not be building the entire product, right? You may be doing some portion of it, right? So in order to do that, what they wanted a mass number of people. So that's why these companies used to go and recruit people, in thousands in campuses, and the entry barrier is less. You don't need to know, for example, a few minutes back I was mentioning, about somebody want to become a freelancer, right? I said learn in depth. So that much depth was not required. Take a engineering graduate, doesn't matter which branch he or she from, right? Could be from civil, could be from computer science, could be from EC, doesn't matter. Take them, check them, basic aptitude and things like that. Then basically go and deploy them, in a large scale training. Like for example, construct a training center, right? Go and train them for a 3 months or something like that, and you become deployable. And what these companies were doing, they were mainly betting on the cost. Cost means, like for example, instead of recruiting one engineer in the US, right, you can basically recruit, let us say, 5 engineers or 10 engineers in India. Okay, so that was a services model, or what you call it as a what you call a mass scale development model that was working on. Okay, and as we speak, this has changed significantly. And even if you take a services company, a traditional Infosys kind of companies, right, they are also basically moving up in the value chain. For example, recently I heard that rather than taking up a small development or a bug fixing kind of work, right, they're now bagging bigger contracts where they wanted to transform a company with AI, right? AI transformation they're taking up. So what has happened is the complexity of the work, or the ownership of the work, has significantly increased, because at the lower level, which was done in the manual engineer kind of work, which is getting replaced with AI. Okay, has the AI is replacing some jobs? Yes, but it's also creating a new type of jobs where you know it is basically becoming, right, skill based specific hiring. Recently I was looking into some of the salary levels, right? So earlier we used to have some concern saying that, let us say, some of these companies used to offer some salary, and that salary will remain the same for past 20 years, 15 years, right? There has been some controversies in the social media, etc. Now some of these logos, when you see what salaries that they're offering for entry level, it is significantly increased. Okay, that means they want a relatively lesser number and more skill based engineers. And definitely when they're paying that much, their expectations is also high. That is where the entry barrier is become higher, right? And as I said, it is no longer about mass scale development, mass scale testing, or maintenance, or sustenance, or support. It is also doing real value added product development. Okay, so if you look at creating a shirt, right? Okay, suppose this analogy that I give, right, earlier you used to do some portion of the building a shirt, either cutting a cloth, or putting a button, right, or putting a stitching, right? Now the idea is to build a entire shirt. Okay, so if you look at this, basically the left hand side, the AI and geopolitics is basically changing that more in a negative sense. On the right side, right, we are talking about GCC, the global capability centers, which are getting established in India. And there are a lot of Indian product companies who want to innovate, or even I'm saying the services companies also innovating in terms of AI, right? They started bagging project with respect to AI, right? So that is where the market is shifting. And because of which, what we are seeing, the left hand side, okay, where there was a mass scale hiring and mass scale deployment with a relatively entry barrier, is where the job loss is happening, whereas more value added activities, job growth is happening. Okay, this is across the board. I'm just putting it in a little structured manner, because what happens when you turn on the media, any form of media, we get more negative news. But having said that, job growth is there for these specific skills. So my idea of this webinar or this particular session is to move you from left side to right side. Okay, and moving from left side to right side, more than a technical skills, or it is a Java or JavaScript, we discussed about JavaScript previously. More than the skill level change, right? It is more about mindset shift. We need to understand that this is the expectation. Okay, so since we also deal with a lot of students on a daily basis in terms of placements, right? Okay, so in terms of placements, what we used to see, let us say 4 years back, specifically after the pandemic, right, there was a huge hiring spree. Okay, People came out. There was a lot of spending happening. Venture capitals were putting money like anything. From that time, if you see, right, the expectation from the companies. I'm not talking about big company, small company, mid-sized company. Every company, the expectations are significantly gone high. Okay, so that is where we say, right, we need to make a switch from left side to right side. Okay, this is a common message for all of you which I want to share. Okay, so when I say shirt making analogy, as I said earlier, you do one portion and you are very fine with it. Say you want to build a shirt, you want to do a fabric cutting, stitching, finishing, pressing, packaging, maintenance and support. Any one piece you are doing. Now what are you going to do? Okay, you need to build a entire shirt. Okay, this is a huge change in the mindset. And at a high level, when a company says, I want to build an entire shirt, when it percolates down to, let us say, a principal engineer or a technical manager or a senior engineer onto an entry level engineer like you, definitely the skill set they're expecting is very high. Okay. So, and then let us, I think I had some pictures here. I'll just show that, then we'll come to the case study part, right? So, this used to be the conversation among engineering graduates, right? Anyhow, I did some branch of engineering. We'll do 2 to 3 months of course, bro. Okay, I think you guys understand the bro language better. Any company will hire me. Okay, good idea, bro. Right now, what is the scenario? Campus recruitment almost dried up. Okay, expectations are really high, and my academic knowledge will not help me. That is very clear. Okay, so that's why we say, in order for you to build that level of a depth, right? The key message that I want to share from to all of you on behalf of WSA is start early. Gone are the days and as I said, this 1 month program, what are we giving? It is just to push you in the direction. But believe me, right, you need to start not in the final year, or I'm happy that some of your final year students are participating, because we don't want to discourage anybody. We wanted to motivate. That's the whole idea of this internship. I would say you guys start as early as the third semester, right? Along with your academia, you keep on building skill set, right? This is one arena, one platform where you are building the skill set, right? You need to build long enough so that when you are in the graduation, right, when you're about to pass out of your engineering, right, you are able to generate not a resume with ABC skills, right? Earlier and all, I used to make fun of my students, saying that, hey, more than 95 percentage of your resume doesn't have the information that the company asks for, right? You may have your name, academic details and all, right? And all they would be your personal details, right? Your passport number, Aadhaar number, etc., right? And maybe you'll have a small mention of what you call your project in a corner in your resume, right? That will not help. So today we are talking about building something called digital career portfolio. When you say digital career portfolio, it consists of three things. One is build a solid LinkedIn profile and start publishing whatever you are doing already. In fact, some of you already tagged me in the LinkedIn, right? By identifying WebStack Academy and all. Okay, you can, whether you tag me or doesn't tag me, that's not a problem. But you can very well start doing some noise in the LinkedIn. When you say not noise, means not without merit, keep publishing. Okay, every day whatever you learn in as a part of the WSA internship, right, at least once in a week you post, right? Even if you build something half, take some screenshot, put your learning, create a post, right? One thing. Second thing, let's say you complete a project, right? Create a GitHub profile, create a repository for yourself, and build a very nice GitHub profile also, so that when somebody, or I will put it in simple manner, when somebody searches your name, what comes in the internet, right? What comes in the Google search, right? Second thing is GitHub. Third one comes resume. Okay. Often we used to think resume is everything, right? Today we say LinkedIn is saying that I'm doing something on a regular basis. GitHub, he says, look, this is what the projects I built. And finally, resume is a combination of everything. So all the three components are combination of digital career portfolio, or DCP. Okay, you need to build like that, then only you'll be able to achieve, or then only you'll be able to target the jobs which I mentioned. Because as I say, right, the job is shifting from left side to right side. That kind of a specific expectations you will be able to meet. And as I said, this internship is an humble attempt from our side, right? It's a free internship. In India, what is the scenario, right? The moment you say free, people will think, oh, it comes with something, right? So whereas our idea is to give you a genuine skill building and a project building opportunity, or rather, in order to build a project, whatever the skill that you require, you are able to learn that, so that you see end of the 1 month you have something working in front of your eyes. Because we don't want it to still going and studying some theory or building some copy pasting code, etc., etc., right? You don't need to do that. Rather, you also learn in this process, right, certain AI based development also. Okay, I'm not telling that AI you need to ignore, but the important part about AI is that which one to pick, right? AI may throw many things, right? What AI should give, we should apply our intelligence and pick something which is relevant for my project or my context, right? So this is a core message that we wanted to share with all of you, right? Where the job market is heading and what are the expectations from the companies today, even before 4 or 5 years back and now where we stand, right? There's a significant shift in terms of the expectation from the organization, any organization, smart startups, mid-size, big company, everywhere it's happening. And if you are ready to demonstrate the skill set, definitely companies are ready to pay you a better or higher salaries also. Okay, so now some case studies, people are talking about AI, right? Let us start, right? First thing is, where and all AI it is there, right? First of all, people have launched AI as a product, right? As an independent product. A lot of LLMs are there, be it Claude or be it Chat GPT, right? Gemini, etc., etc. So that is one which has been added as a product, as an independent, where you can go and run your chat, or you build your agents, etc. That is one way to look at AI. Okay. Second thing is AI in the development process. I think some of you ask, right? Is that AI is going to develop and then is it going to replace everything, right? I would say here still there is a lot of work in progress happening, guys. Okay. For example, now let us say I'm a web developer, right? And I'm working as a part of the company. Okay. Definitely, whatever Claude throws up, I cannot copy and paste, right? It may create a, because Claude or anything for that matter will not understand the real use case, right? It will definitely give you a snippet of code, you can make it faster and easier, but at the end of the day you need to know how you are leveraging it. Okay, so what we see broadly, I attended multiple conferences about this thing is, right, because imagine an organization with few thousands of people, and they're all used to certain way of developing. And imagine you are using a legacy code also. As I said, a company doesn't mean that everybody is in a MERN stack, right? Somebody is in a legacy stack, somebody is in a kind of in between, they adapted some technology, somebody is in MERN, right? Now, when you want to mass adapt your development process as an organization, right? Okay, the development and testing work, okay, I would say it is in progress. In fact, sometimes there is also a counter effect. Recently, I was talking with one of my other friend. He said, "You know what? We have forced our team to utilize an AI, LLM for their development. Said use AI, use AI, right? At the end of the day, they started overusing that. And end of the day, when they saw the bill from an LLM, right, what they charge, that was so exorbitant that they thought, oh my God, very well I could have kept a human being and did it, right? Okay, so they initially forced it, and some of the cases it is backfiring. Some of the cases it is not giving the right set of answers, the right set of context it is able to understand. So that's what I'm telling. Work in progress is there. Things are changing quite fast here. Okay, that is right, right? But having said that, okay, what companies are looking for? Okay, if you know AI, if you know how to use this AI in development process, that's great. That is really welcome. But if you know the foundational solid programming skills, if you remember my initial slide when I was talking about the skill set and the approach that we are taking in this particular this thing, right? So if you see here, this foundational computer science or foundational these activities play a very important role any company that we go for. You see, right, foundational learning, this is very very important. Okay, so that with a solid digital career portfolio is what companies are looking for. Nobody is asking, yeah, if you know certain LLM, that's great, but what they're looking for is a solid computer science engineer or an IT engineer who can do very good coding. If you know AI enablement, that's great. Okay, and universities are trying to integrate from the third semester. That's the idea we are talking about as a start early, right? As I said, foundations is the key, because as I said, we speak with all the companies, and some of them will put all hi-fi AI tools and AI framework. Okay, something that's good, but they're looking for a solid foundation, because even let's say AI generates the code, right? You should have the ability to judge whether that's a right code or a wrong code. In fact, if you do a copy paste of that, right, just like that, it may create a counter effect. Instead of the code working, you may break the existing code, right? So that's the main thing. Okay, and AI definitely see it as an enabler. Okay, whatever it used to take weeks, probably you can do it in days. Probably whatever it takes in days, you can do it in hours. Whatever it takes in hours, it take in minutes or anything for that matter, right? See it as an enabler, see it as a productivity enhancer rather than, right, replacing everything, right? Of course, total manual work, brainless work, we don't need a human brain, right? Very well, it can be done. Okay. So what it means to you, okay, earlier, tier 2, tier 3 colleges saw bulk hiring from large services IT companies, right? For example, TCS, right? They used to come and hire. In fact, TCS, in fact, recently I was looking into the Cognizant CEO interview. They said they are going to hire entry level people, but their skill set that they're expecting is quite high. Okay. So those roles focus on outsourced repetitive tasks now getting automated or shrinking due to AI and geopolitical disruption. When you say geopoliticals, how the countries are, the war situation, etc. Right? We open the TV, that is one sad thing we all seeing on a daily basis. Definitely, that is also affecting the job market. Okay. The campus placement model is evolving as we speak. As a 2022 graduate, probably the wrong place to be in. The volume based hiring is giving away to skill based selection. Even when I speak, right, I have very close connects with people in IITs, right. I myself graduated from NIT, right. Many of my juniors who got offers from top notch product companies in the campus placements, now their jobs are, revoked. They're telling, they're not able to honor the offer that they made, right? So definitely the model is evolving. It's unfortunate thing, but there is no, we need to adapt to this, right? Skill based selection. Okay. And as I said, the global capacity centers or domestic product companies are taking service stage into center stage, or even the traditional IT companies, right? They want to have a makeover, right? Moving from a contract service based work to a more of a higher end AI based work, right? So everywhere the transformation is happening. So which means to say, as I said, the nature of work has become complex. So they expect you, entry level engineer or graduate, to own a complex set of modules, right? It's no longer to be, a manual work and contribute to the end to end product development. They expect you to own a more complicated technology or piece of work. Okay. And definitely India based teams are delivering complete products, not just service components, right? Adapting to this change is non negotiable. So this is my request to all of you, right? You may take this webinar. I'm sure you are applying your own thought process. What am I saying? Is it, how much you are able to digest, etc., etc. That I leave it up to you. But important part is, we need to adapt. It has already taken a center stage, right? We cannot be in an isolated or in a paradise and say, no, what, this is no longer true, this will not work, etc. It's already in the center stage, right? We have to adapt and change. One of the plus point of human beings also adaptation, right? Otherwise, we would not have survived for so many, I don't know, maybe millions of years, right? So many challenges human race has faced, right? We are able to not only survive, we also could thrive because we have always been adapting and changing. Okay. So we have no choice but to adapt to this change, whatever is happening in the job market. Okay. I think this is what we discussed. 2 to 3 months of courses won't help, right? Definitely you need to start early. Okay. So with that, I would like to pause here. I have few more slides to cover. Okay. And let me just check whether any questions are able to relate, whatever I discussed so far. Um, Yeah. So that's a question here. TypeScript or JavaScript, which is a must to learn. See, TypeScript and JavaScript are, how do I put it, right? Have you ever tried TypeScript? Right? TypeScript and JavaScript are similar, if not same, right? So I suggest start with JavaScript, then learning TypeScript becomes easy for you. Okay, earlier, Angular used to use TypeScript, right? If you learn JavaScript, it will be easy for you to learn TypeScript also. Okay. Learning Next.js is important while learning MERN. Not necessarily. Again, there is a lot of new things have come up. I understand. Vue.js is also there. I suggest you go with Node and Express as a part of the MERN. That should be good enough for you guys to basically start with the your MERN stack journey. Okay. Yeah. So I discussed that. Yeah, are the sessions available as recorded? Of course, it's all YouTube live. You can very well check our channel. You'll be able to see them. Okay. I think regarding the Offer letter, there have been some queries. Leave a note in the forum, and our team will be able to revert. Okay. How much JavaScript should master before learning React? Okay. So I would say at least an intermediary level you should learn about JavaScript before you start learning React. Okay. So that would be a good, don't be too basic, don't be too advanced. An intermediate level JavaScript would be good enough for you to get into Java React, to start with React. Okay. This internship is enough for MERN learning or not? No, no, it is not at all. As I said, you right, it is just that you guys have started the feeling of the MERN stack, how to basically start writing your own project, right? Write around 4,000 lines of code, build a project, right? That is the idea. This is a first stepping stone, right? You have quite a long journey ahead. Step by step, you need to learn, and as I said, right, build projects, more projects. Okay, that would be my answer. Okay. Right. I applied for internship, but slots are full. But should I continue it or learning MERN full stack? I don't know. I don't think slots are full. Students are coming and learning. Right. Right. Okay. So again, telling, can you please share how to improve after this course, sir? Yeah, that's a good question. Right. So one of the very important thing is, once you guys are done with the internship, right, where you have something working, right? Front end you are going to code, and back end we are going to give ready made, right? What are you going to do? You are going to develop a back end on your own. Use your Node and Express, and then there is also the database. You can use MongoDB or any similar databases. Build that MySQL, etc. Right? So basically, build the entire web application on your own. Okay, right from the front end, back end, database. So that is nothing but your first full stack project. Okay. So like that, I would suggest minimum you build 10 projects. Okay, you might sound, I might sound a little different here, but as I said, that is a level of expertise that the companies are expecting today. Okay, so we can, share you some project ideas as a part of the internship. We can, put it in a forum. We do have a list of projects which we can share you. You can subsequently take and build on your own after the internship also. And this is when you do that, put it in LinkedIn, put it in your GitHub, and then keep on adding project into your resume. Eventually, I want to see a situation where in your resume, right, you have 90% information project, very basic, 5 to 10% your personal information. Now it's reverse, right? That's a change that you want to see in your resume. Okay. Where is ma'am? I just okay. As I said, today's class is this webinar, right? Tomorrow, Richa will resume with her session. Right today, as I said, our team slots this awareness webinar, career building webinar, etc. So that you guys, as I told, right, when you're building something, you should know where are you heading. Okay. Is there any cost for certification? No, it's absolutely free. You don't need to pay for this certification process. As I said, don't bother about the cost. It's a free internship. Okay. All right. Cool. Lot of questions. Okay. Mm, okay. I would like to pause here and check. Are we okay? Are you able to relate whatever we told? We covered basically 2, 3 pieces. We started with the full stack. Why the full stack developer is important. We saw. Then we saw why MERN based full stack web development is important. We'll be having a what do you call, majority of the web applications are built, modern day applications are built using MERN stack. We saw that. Then as a second section, we switched to the we switched to the the job market trends, where the job market is heading, and what are the expectations from the companies, and how you can continue to build the skills, right? And how you can build your portfolio, and how this internship acts as a first step towards that, and how AI is impacting the job market, etc. Right? Okay. Is that clear? I think there was some question about AI. Okay. AI, AI impact, etc. Okay. Okay. What is vibe coding? Please explain. See, vibe coding, as I said, right, it is for a more for a somebody who doesn't understand, who can just dictate and build the application. And as I said, right, earlier it was creating a lot of vibe. Okay, but later they figured out that that is good for a idea to first working prototype. Let us say, for example, I have an idea, I want to build a product. but I don't have any technical idea. For such things, vibe coding is great, but vibe coding using that whatever the app or a product that I build, it is nowhere close to the real production use case. Okay, so definitely you need a much more mature coding practices. That is where I talked about the importance of foundations, etc. Okay. So what to learn things with MERN, I think I already covered. Start with the backend. You know whatever learning that you're having in this internship, start with the backend. Build your own full stack application in both brand front end, back end, and database. At least do it 10 times. Okay. Okay. Uh, okay. Could you share any platforms where I can test skills for self evaluation? I think go with Lead Code. Lead Code is a great platform for verifying your problem solving skills. Okay. Every hackathon topics are based on AIML now. Should we probably move towards that? I think you can wait there. Hackathons again a great way to go and really test what you already know. But what I suggest is before you go, because hackathons do expect you to come with an entry level skill. In fact, we ourselves conducted some of the hackathons, and we know our team members have participated as judges, etc. So what hackathons expect? Hackathons, see, just because you're going hackathon is not going to help, right? Hackathons expect you to already bring in a skill set so that you can execute a project there itself in a 24-hour, 48-hour, and show something by the end of that hackathon duration, right? What I suggest is, as of now, you guys focus on the digital career portfolio. Once you build good number of projects, definitely you can explore hackathon. Probably hackathons also has become one of the most you know reliable way for the companies to recruit people. If you perform well, along with you getting a prize, you may get a job also, right? Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think uh, yeah, I think mostly covered. There are some questions about certification and etc. Probably posted in the group. Our team can check and respond. Okay. All right. Okay. Shall I proceed? I have few more slides we can cover. Couple of more, maybe two, three more slides are there. Then we are done for the day. I thought 1.5 hour it will take. We are 8:10 now. Maybe another 10 minutes. I'll be able to cover some more slides. Okay. Yeah, sir. Why Express used in Node.js applications? So Express is again what you call a framework which helps you to develop REST-based API, right? Because what happens, right? Whenever you are developing some logic, ultimately what is that? There is a business logic, right, in the backend. So Node.js are always, not only I would say Express.js. Anytime we talk about any programming language in the backend, that always associated with the framework. And say Python and Django, right? We say Java and Spring Boot, right? And then what do you call Ruby and Rails, right? So it's always a combination, right? Because as a programming language, be it JavaScript or or Python or everything, it's a logic, right? Where the business logic is written. You can say that's a bottom layer. But in order for the front end to consume, let's say for example, you're writing a simple application of username and password validation, right? So the front end should send a request and the back end should verify and send back the response, right? In order to do that, the back end should expose something called as RESTful APIs or REST APIs, right? For that, this particular framework is getting used. That is where the Express.js is a more of a REST API providing framework, you can say. Okay, hope that's clear. Okay. Yeah, sir, AML or software development, which is a good career path in 2026 for freshers? I think I already mentioned. As I said, don't go too much gaga about AML as of now. You guys build solid full stack since you already come here. Then start exploring AML. Because as I said, things are evolving very fast there from a job market point of view, at an entry level point of view. I would say that you guys have build more in full stack, because that is my answer for the hackathon question also, right? Okay. In a few weeks, fourth year, but I don't have a correct resume, high time, but I cannot stay consistent. Please suggest learn HTML, CSS, JS, learning Node, while WSA intern and learning Java help, right? It is definitely will help, Kumar, but as I said, right, whatever you're learning, right, my request to all of you is that, right, you basically build projects, okay? Because I always tell my students, right, projects are the way to placements. The more projects that you have, you will be able to better prepare for placements for any company for that matter. So learning wise, I keep on learning, right? Or I come and an analogy I can tell is, suppose I come and tell I know Chinese, right? Chinese, Japanese, I can keep on writing. But what is the real way that I know Chinese, right? Can I write a paragraph? Can I write an essay? That's the real testimony. The same way you build your projects, right? Of course, DSA. Okay, DSA again, I would put it in the problem solving or the foundation bucket. I talked about lead code, right? Because DSA is, by default, every company would expect, along with the, stack level skill what you are building, right? The foundations which I mentioned, the computer science foundations are very important, which includes algorithms, optimization. What is data structure? Data structure is nothing but the optimization, no algorithms, right? So DSA, that is why it is very, very important, right? Because you may be wondering why companies so much care about algorithms and DSA, right? Because when you build something in scale, we talked about millions of requests coming in and things like that, right? So you need to run in an optimal fashion. You cannot consume so much resources that when things scale, the performance comes down. And imagine 1 minute, or forget about 1 minute, 10 seconds, your Instagram reel is not playing. You get so frustrated, right? So in order to work at that level, you need to know these algorithms, optimization, etc. plays a very important role. Okay. Yeah, entering third year, what I have to do to place an FSD career like roadmap? As I already told you, okay, digital career portfolio. Okay, start building projects. Okay, understand, sir. When it comes to project problem solving, you cannot. Yes, Kumar, that is why you need to practice more. I know projects is where your real thing will be tested, right? I can explain a lot. I can ask you to explain a concept or something, you can explain. But when you ask you to code, that's where we face challenges, right? Come out of that fear, work on more number of projects. Okay. Okay. So I think the job part I answered, right? If I have to time to learn one language initially, should I choose Python or Java? What learning part would you suggest? I think since you come here, I say, I already told you beginning itself, start with JavaScript, both in the front end and back end. That way, one language, you become master at it. That is good enough. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think I have few more slides. Let us continue. Yeah. Okay. So some of you asked, how do I build a roadmap, or how do we do a skill building? First one, foundations. As I said, no, in this internship, this is what we are trying to build. Some introduction to web application development, right? Front end, and probably some basics of back end. Okay. Then definitely you need to go deep. That is where I talk about, advanced front end, intensive back end, right? DSA. Then third one would be what, right? Advanced back end, advanced DSA, and placement preparation. Okay. So, when you say that, that way you are focusing on the foundational DSA, computer science foundations, right? And also end to end, right? From, HTML box to all the way writing to a database query, right? You should be able to build the entire application and deploy on your own. Okay. So I suggest you guys are here as a part of the internship. You are asking me about roadmap. See, roadmap means I can confuse and do many other gyan, right? My idea is to make it simple for you guys so that you can start implementing, right? So you are here by being part of this internship, right? So I suggest you start 2 and 3. That way, you'll be able to build a solid portfolio for yourself. Okay. And yeah, there are some changes in the academia. They also understood because we talked with VTU and many other similar universities. They see that in order for their students to get job, training them in the pre-final year or final year is not sufficient, and they're all pushing for internship, as you all know. And there is a NEP, education policy, multiple entry, multiple exit, like how it happens in the US, right? After third year, you can take a break and come back and join. Not sure how effectively it is implemented, but it is still in progress, right? But what we see is, right, every university and college pushing for internship, but it's fragmented. As you all know, majority of the internships where they promise something, but end of the day you do something and go and give a certificate to your college, they'll give a grade and that's it, right? That's what we mean by fragment. So we wanted to change that. That is also one of our intention when I said in the beginning, why are we doing it for free, right? Why are we doing it such a hands-on manner, etc.? Because we wanted to contribute to this. Okay, not only keep speaking, right? We also take action. And one of the other beautiful thing is that what today everything we can do it online, and our team made it all the more simple by making it as a YouTube live. Earlier we used to run some webinar tools, go to meeting, or or Zoom and all, right? But now being in YouTube, sorry, in your YouTube live, right, you can even make it democratized. Anybody can just subscribe to our channel, see all the videos, and then start developing a project on their own. Okay. Yeah, they're allowing internships, okay, and integrating with the degree. Okay. So as I said, right, our recommendation, if you want me to summarize whatever we've been doing, start as early as third semester, right, and pace it out. I spoke about 3 phases, right, and you can start from third semester. How you wanted to pace it up. Subsequently, what resources we can give you, we can provide you some whatever we have, and other things we will let you to figure it out. Okay, because today skill building has become a marathon, not a sprint. A marathon, you all know, right? It's a 43 kilometer. It is no longer a 100 meter race, right? Where you just with a crazy energy, or I would say how you study for a exam, right? I In a lighter note, I keep discussing with a lot of engineering graduates. They tell, sir, for one semester I study one day, or one exam I study for one day, right? And then on a lighter note, I tell, look, 50 subject you studied or 60 subject you studied, including your labs and everything, that means you study 60 days in 4 years, right? If you do mathematically 20 days or 30 days a month, right, you studied 2 months in the matter of 4 years. Kindly note that approach is not going to help. Okay, so you need to build that resilience, right? Start, again, don't get overwhelmed. Oh my god, I need to run 43 kilometers, right? Start taking the first step. In fact, I would really appreciate you guys taken the first step, and the very fact that you are attending this session today is a very right direction, I would say. But every small step will lead you to the destination. Okay, so that's a thing, right? And what is my attempt today, what is that I am trying to do on behalf of WSA team, is that to make things easier for you to digest. At the same time, right, I'm not diluting the message is very clear, right? You have to start early, build a digital career portfolio there. I'm not compromising on the output. But what happens is many times this message get lost, because you also being a Gen Z, you hear a lot of data. And in today in Instagram, open, everybody becomes a guru, right? So what I am sharing is, it is not my opinion, it is not our mentor's opinion, right? What we hear from the market. And by distilling and giving you in a simplified form, so that you can digest and start taking the small steps, so that you start your marathon. Okay, so just a quick thing. This is what the similar approach. We, as I said, we also have our full-time course, a 6 months course we run in WSA. That's a placement-oriented course. We take a similar approach, right from we run it like a semester-based approach, where you start with the front end, and steadily you progress. Whatever the 3 steps that we have mentioned, the entire thing will be covered as a part of the course. But that course is a comes with the placements, right? If you guys are further keen on, just check out our website. Okay, so that's pretty much what I had for you guys. No, I think we covered quite a broad topics today, right from the job market, right, full stack, AI, everything, right? Okay. Yeah. So, any questions we can take, and yeah. So somebody is asking, sir, I just graduated from a college. I didn't got placed in my college. Can you tell me any roadmap to get? I think I already told you, 3 phase approach. First step you're already doing as a part of the internship. 2 and 3, you need to do it on your own. What skills are most valued during placement interviews? See, placement interviews, again, broadly, 2 things I would put. One is foundational skills, okay, because I think 2 days back I was running on Friday I was doing a embedded systems webinar, similar to you guys, right? We also do an embedded systems internship, right? There also I told the same foundations, right? Your data structures, problem solving, algorithms. That is one portion. That is there common. Then your domain skills. For example, if you are an embedded engineer, you need to know about microcontrollers, operating systems, etc. Whereas you are a web application engineer, right? You need to know about any one stack, right? End to end. Okay. Sir, is AI cut software develop job for freshers? Yes, it does. That's what I told you. It has already cut. Okay. But as I said, if you empower yourself, if you skill yourself, you can target a higher value added jobs, rather than getting into level one and getting into level one salary. Try to get it level four and get a level four salary. That's why I'm telling, right? It's become a marathon. Okay. Yes, it is already eaten up. It's very simple, right? What is there to ask, right? Look at the campus placements today in across all the engineering colleges in India, right? Okay, that's what it is, right? So is DSA mandatory for any industry level interviews? Absolutely. Okay, that's what I mean by foundation. I also explained why it is designing an optimal algorithm, building scalability, etc. Your DSA plays a key role. Okay, knowing about linked list, stacks, queues, trees, right? And graphs when it comes to your what do you call web application especially, right? Or put a simple example, no, your Uber taxi or a Swiggy delivery boy, he takes the shortest route, right? So how does it work? There's a DSA that is behind, which is powering, right, shortest path algorithm, right? That's why DSA is important. It's not only about, why my God, why they're asking DSA everywhere. And DSA is being used in all the applications today to bring in the scalability and optimization and performance, etc. So DSA is definitely a non-negotiable. Okay. DSA again is a foundational skills. DSA you can apply in any language. You can apply in Java. You can apply in, let's say, C. So whichever language you can choose, that's fine. But foundationally, you ensure that you are strong. Okay. Cool. Any other questions? Intermediate or hard level questions, right? I think you start with intermediate, but go for hard. Again, what happens, no, Darshani Prachi, right? This is again a college level mindset, right? Saying that, oh my God, I study this and I not study that subject, that I'll ignore. It came in the last semester. So what are you trying to do here, right? You try to study minimal and you get the maximum output, right? That doesn't work. Okay. So go for the hard, but may straight away going for the hard may be little hard for you. That's why it's called hard. Start with intermediate, go for hard. In fact, I also recommend my students when they saw lead code and all, right, I said forget about easy. Go for start with intermediate, go for hard. Always hard one only will get you that because you are trying for a level 4 job. The expectation has gone up. That's what I've been telling throughout this webinar, right? Okay. Hope that's clear, Darshini. So in a way, I'm more happy today because a lot of questions I could answer. Sometimes this in the stream, right? It runs very fast. I may not be able to answer many questions, right? At least I'm feeling little satisfied that I could answer good number of your questions. Okay, yeah, thank you. How can I improve my coding skills and problem solving ability while learning full stack development? Solve lead code. Very simple. Okay, pick it up. Lead code or hacker rank. We used to recommend. Every day lead code is a what you call bread and butter for you. Keep on solving. More problem you solve, the more stronger you become. See, again, I don't say it's a coding skills, right? I would say problem solving skills. You're exercising your brain so that programming language, any programming language you are given, right? Or I put it like this, right? Often students, many of you ask, right, sir, I recommended JavaScript, and somebody asked, why not Java, why not Python? I said, fine, no problem. But kindly note, your programming languages are just like natural language. Now I'm talking to you in English, right? I may talk in Tamil, I may talk in Kannada, I may talk in Telugu, right? These are all, imagine, right? They're all Java, JavaScript, Python. They're just like natural languages, right? But what is more important here? Do we need to learn the language and speak? But any language, in order for me to speak, I need to think. You agree with me, right? Okay. Same way, more than getting language specific, build the capability to think. How do you build the capability to think? Solve more problems. Because once you solve problems, then programming languages becomes a tool to solve the problem. That's all. Say today, with all the discussions, you say, for example, JavaScript. Let's say later you go and get a job where your manager says, no, no, we are not using a JavaScript based stack. We are using a Python based stack. Python is a language, but using Python, what are you going to do? Only let us say I learn Telugu or I learn Hindi. What am I going to do? Unless I know the thinking process to talk, right? So please think the programming languages are tools to solve the problem. The problem solving skills need to come from you. That's why I'm telling you to go with DSA and lead code. Okay. Which language is better for coding in this era? Python or Java? As I said, no, doesn't matter. I recommend JavaScript because that is what we propagate as a part of WSA. Start with JavaScript, but if you feel you wanted to learn one more, do it. But don't learn all of them. Sometimes I see students learn 5 programming language, PHP, Java, what do you call J2, whatever, Java and Python, Ruby, right? Don't do list. That's not going to help. Okay. Learn one language or maximum two, go in deep. Can you solve the problems? That is what companies are looking for rather than just a mere programming language. Or somebody spoke about certification. That is one big drama happening, right? Go and do something, you generate a certificate in no time. You know how to do that, right? More than me. Certification is just a paper, yeah. What's the use, right? You can put it in your line, it's a resume, but what's the point, right? Unless you know, as I told, no, I can write. I know Japanese, I know Chinese, but if you ask me one question, I need to be able to write, right? Okay, the same thing you need to apply here. Somebody telling your answers are very valuable and helpful. Thank you, sir. Hey, my pleasure. Okay. Antique piece, your name. I don't know what's your real name. Some of you given some interesting names here. Okay. Is Python a C program language is good for coding skills? Again, okay, same way. Don't bother too much. Take any one and go in deep. Okay. Yeah. JS is enough. I would suggest as a web developer or a full stack application engineer, you guys start with you know JavaScript. That itself will take you long enough. Go in deep. Then, as I said, later you want to pick up anyone, you can aramse pick it up. I don't think that's going to be a big issue. Okay, build your thinking. Then language becomes easier. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any other? All right. Yeah. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining today's session. I know this just came in as a surprise, right? So you guys proceed tomorrow onwards with our mentor Richa. Go and have a great internship. My idea was to intervene in the first week itself to give you this direction, so that when tomorrow when she's making you do code, right, you should know, basically, able to relate with whatever I have shared so far. Okay. So any comments, any feedback? I'm getting, the session is more valuable. Thank you, sir. Right. Brilliant at your craft. Wonderful session. Productive day. That's correct. Okay. Any other feedback? Any other comments? I'm seeing a lot of hearts coming, smiles also coming. Thank you for the wonderful session. Bind the session. I don't know what you mean by binding the session. Okay. Rakis keep on sending. I don't know what you mean by that. Okay. Thank you, sir. Says someone. Your name, your login names are quite cryptic. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. A lot of hearts are also flying. Okay. A lot of hearts are flying. Thank you very much to all of you. Okay. I know you're all very blessed and a very brilliant set of people. My idea, as I said, right, give you the direction and clarity. Okay, because I also keep telling, right, all these things I can do, but at the end of the day, you are the judge for your career. Okay, so no need to, the decision need to be taken by you only. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to share. A lot of thank you messages are flowing in. Take care. So please continue the coding sessions with Ms. Richa from tomorrow. Okay. All right. Take care. Bye.